Caleb stood at the entrance of his newly purchased apartment, a sense of triumph swelling from within him. Life had not been kind to him, but he had persevered. Through his own hard work and the assistance of his uncle, he had secured a position as a loan agent and finally saved enough money to purchase this humble abode. It was not without its flaws. Situated on the fifth floor, surrounded by towering buildings, and located in a questionable part of town. But it was his, and that was all that mattered. As he wandered through the apartment, Caleb took stock of his new surroundings. The main hall was spacious enough to accommodate a couch, a TV console, and a small kitchenette. A coffee pot was already present on the counter, left behind by the previous owner. Caleb shrugged. Every little bit helps. The room to the left was small and run down, with plaster falling off the walls and bricks exposed. It must have been beautiful once, but now it was obstructed by the towering structure next door. The bedroom was narrow, but sufficient for a bed, side table, and cupboard. The bathroom was in disrepair, but the shower and toilet worked. It was home. Caleb had been working at Cooper and Cooper Limited for only a week, but he had quickly become familiar with the workings of the business. Qualify those who appeared financially stable, disqualify those who did not, and be wary of young entrepreneurs attempting to secure loans. Please, Mr. Johnson, I need this loan. My son is very sick, pleaded Mrs. Henderson, her voice cracking with emotion. I'm sorry, Mrs. Henderson, but you already know you have 2 loans running and 4 maxed out credit cards. I cannot approve your loan, Caleb replied, with a firm and unsympathetic tone. The arrival of Mr. Wilkerson, a successful businessman seeking a corporate loan, brought a glimmer of hope to Caleb. This could mean a significant commission for him. He could buy a new car. The night fell like a shroud over Caleb's apartment, cloaking everything in darkness. He had retreated to the sanctuary of his home, bringing in some Chinese takeout and a 6-pack of Coors Light. It was game night, and he was determined to have some fun, despite the setbacks he had faced. Wilkerson may have shunted him away, but Caleb was not deterred. He was going to make it big, to show them all what he was truly capable of. As the game dragged on, Caleb's excitement grew, his heart pounding with each victory. His team emerged triumphant, and for a moment, there was a glimmer of hope in his eyes. Maybe, just maybe, things were finally looking up for him. But as the night wore on, Caleb's buzz faded, replaced by a growing sense of emptiness. The TV flickered off, and he stumbled to the bathroom to relieve himself, his mind hazy with alcohol. He stumbled back to the bedroom, his thoughts muddled, and collapsed onto the bed, exhausted. Cleaning could wait until tomorrow. For now, he was lost in the darkness of his own thoughts, drifting off to sleep, his dreams haunted by the ghosts of what could have been. Suddenly, a loud crash interrupted his peace. Caleb picked up a floor lamp as protection and searched the apartment for intruders. Finding none, he noticed a hole in the middle of the living room floor, the size of a bowling ball. He looked up, but the ceiling was undamaged. The hole was too large to be caused by termites or a rodent, and the home too new to be caving in. Using his phone flashlight to illuminate the hole, Caleb hunched forward. He could see nothing but darkness. Without warning, his hand was pulled in, followed by his arm, shoulder, head, and then his entire body. He screamed for help, but the sound was swallowed by the void. After what seemed like an eternity, Caleb crashed onto the floor. He looked around, recognizing his childhood bedroom. Everything was as he remembered it. His toys strewn across the floor, the bed neatly made. But he had shrunk. And as he looked into the mirror, he saw himself as he was at 12 years old. Suddenly, the doorknob rattled, and Caleb felt a sense of overwhelming dread. His mother burst into the room, seizing his arm and violently assaulting him. "Why do you continue to embarrass me?" she screamed, her eyes wild with fury. "Why must you take everything?" Caleb's mother grabbed his arm, her grip tight and unyielding. She began to beat him mercilessly, her blows raining down upon him like a storm of fists. "Mommy, no! Stop! Please! Mom!" he cried out, his tears streaming down his face. But his pleas fell on deaf ears, and the onslaught continued. His mother's fury was unrelenting, and as she beat him, she unleashed a torrent of abuse and hate. "This is why Daddy left us. Because of you, you wretched child," she spat, her words laced with venom. "And now so has every other man I have ever loved. Your existence is a curse on me." Caleb could feel the pain mounting inside him, but he had nowhere to go, nowhere to run. His mother's rage was all-consuming, and he was trapped in its suffocating embrace. "Get out of my life! You, get out of my life!" she screamed, pushing him with all her might. Caleb stumbled backwards, tripping over some of the toys, and before he knew it, he was falling through the open window. The world went black as he tumbled into the darkness below. Caleb's eyes slowly opened, and he found himself lying on a muddy floor, surrounded by towering pine trees. The mountain trail was eerily quiet, except for the sound of a bicycle's wheels still turning nearby. He tried to get up, but the sharp pain in his ankle made him fall back to the ground. Panic crept up on him as he called out to his friend, John, but received no response. Caleb crawled on the muddy ground until he spotted the other bicycle, and beside it lay his best friend. Caleb's heart sank as he saw his best friend lying motionless. His chest heaved with sobs as he tried to crawl closer to John's lifeless body. "John," he cried out, his voice cracking with grief. "Best friends forever, right?" he whispered to himself, a wave of guilt crashing over him. He struggled to stand up again, but the pain in his sprained ankle made him fall back down. Crawling on his hands and knees, he made his way over to John's side, his eyes fixed on the sharp piece of tree that had pierced his friend. "I'm sorry," Caleb said, his voice choked with tears. "It's not your fault," John replied weakly, clutching Caleb's shoulder. "You didn't force us to come here. You didn't lose control of your bike and crash into mine." "Oh wait, you did," John said, his voice growing more and more bitter with each word. Caleb turned away, unable to bear the accusations. "Look at me," John demanded, grabbing Caleb's face and forcing him to face his friend's mangled body. "Look at what you did," he screamed. Caleb's heart raced as he tried to protect his innocence. It wasn't my fault, he pleaded, but John just scoffed. Of course not, he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Without warning, he pushed Caleb off the edge, and Caleb tumbled into the darkness below. Caleb found himself in an unfamiliar hospital room. Caleb looked around and caught sight of a woman weeping. His eyes were slow to adjust to the glare, so he squinted. Mrs. Henderson? He called out. She didn't answer, only continued to sob. But Caleb knew without a shadow of a doubt that it was indeed her. He approached her. My boy, my sweet, sweet boy. Caleb saw the child, all shrunken up, clutching a tiny teddy bear, the monitor emitting a steady beep. The child had not made it. Caleb broke down in tears. I couldn't save you. Why couldn't I save you? Wailed Mrs. Henderson. It's not your fault. It's mine. It's all mine, he cried, collapsing to his knees beside the child's bed. His head slumped against the edge. It's all my fault. The world vanished around him. Caleb sat in the darkness, his body hunched and illuminated by a lone light from above. He wept silently, his tears echoing in the void. Suddenly, laughter erupted from the shadows. Caleb emerged from the darkness to confront his tormentor. Get up, you pitiful little wretch, the voice sneered. But Caleb couldn't move. The weight of his guilt was crushing. Fine, wallow in self-pity, but I won't. I'll do whatever it takes to rise up. This world has taken too much from me, and I deserve more. You've always been weak, and now I see it more clearly than ever. It's time for me to emerge, and time for you to feel what it's like to live in the shadows. The voice continued to berate him as he sat there in the dark. Everyone from his past started appearing. His mother's voice joined the chorus, blaming him for everything, followed by John's and Mrs. Henderson's. The voices continued as the people became a horde that beat down on Caleb until they turned into a mountain. Caleb walked out from the shadows and climbed, laughing all the while. As he ascended, he grew closer and closer to the light until they were one. Caleb awoke, drenched in sweat, and made his way to the bathroom. He splashed water on his face and looked into the mirror. He started laughing maniacally. I'm home. I'm home, he said.